week's Everyday Inclusion and Belonging, where we talk about everything under the sun as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I am Mo Berkner-Boyd. I am the founder of the Moxie Exchange and the Everyday Inclusion app. I'm a white woman. I am rocking my red glasses frames as always, mid-length red hair. I did throw some purple in it recently. I got my bookshelf behind me and I'm wearing a red shirt. I am joined today by Pat Waters, and I'm so excited for this conversation because Pat, I just really dig the way you think about this work. So if you would introduce yourself, and then we can kick off this great conversation.
Sure. I'm Pat. Thank you for having me. Pretty honored to be here. I am a mother. I'm now a grandmother. I'm going to be a grandma to a second baby coming in March. So a boy and a girl. So blessed for that. I am a sister, daughter, sibling of 8, baby of 8, and I'm neurodiverse. I'm also an introvert. Could be a little bit shy, oddly enough, socially awkward if there's not structure. So that's a little bit of a fun fact. And I'm a creative thinker. So I think the fact that I process, I'm dyslexic, creativity, art, paint, anything in that space just fills my soul. It's a painting that's behind me. You'll see flowers and a little greenery back there. I painted that the day my dad went into hospice this year, and he passed in May, and he was such a light on this earth. So that's a little bit about me.
I love that introduction, and I don't think I know a single person who's dyslexic who's not wildly creative. And those that are follow along on this series know that I always talk about anybody with neurodiversity or in the disability community. Ooh, you're going to have some great creativity because you're problem solving all day long, every single day.
Yep.
So what led you to this work, Pat? Is it I'm not even going to fill in the blank on that. I'm just so curious.
I think it was by accident, truth be told. What was interesting is that while at LinkedIn, I was head of HR there for a wonderful moment. And there was a leadership forum, and we had all of our top 200 leaders say in this room, and the situation was going on in the front of the room, and I'm standing towards the back of the room, and I am quiet, and I'm looking to my right, and there's my head of engineering, and just give the nod because I know he's an introvert, and there's a couple other introverts in Unite in the back of the room. And I had a gentleman walk up behind me who's clearly an extrovert, does our UX design, and he says, "Waters, what are you doing back here? You should be up there." And I'm like, no, I don't have a role. I'm fine. I'm reserving my energy. He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "I'm an introvert. So I've got it. Like, this is 2 days of overwhelming pressure here. I've got to make sure I modulate my energy." And he was like, "I never knew. Like, how can you be a head of HR and be an introvert?" And I said, "You just use your energy wisely, with care." And so he's like, "You got to talk about it. You got to write about it. You got to do." And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, introverts don't normally come out like that, like in their inner thinking. Like, no, I don't think so, Steve. And so Steve kept pushing, and he texted me throughout the weekend. And so Sunday texted me again. He goes, "Waters, I'm waiting." And he goes, "I'm waiting to read your post." And I'm like, I've never even did it on long form in LinkedIn. I'm like, all right, fine. So I wrote this post, just stream of consciousness. What does it mean to be an introverted leader in Silicon Valley running HR? And I have to tell you that pushing the button to send a post scared me. Yeah, like the heart was just, wow, like I was sweating. And the gifts that came from that, I can't even begin to tell you. So folks that came out like, I don't know how to, express my voice. And so we started getting tips and tricks. I did an event for LinkedIn. I happened to run into Ariane Huffington, and her daughter read my post of all people. And she's, "Oh my gosh, you have to meet Susan Cain." I'm like, I would love to meet Susan Cain. And so then Susan and I became friends, and I started doing Quiet Ambassadors. And then I realized that the sense of belonging that we all crave and our unique self matters so much. And with my neurodiversity and with my introvertedness, and my daughter has more severe special needs than and how she navigates life is challenging, and wanting to belong and making friends, like knowing someone cares about you, is so important. You can see how passionate I am. And
Yeah.
so I was asked once to talk to a professional businesswomen's conference on D&I about how I felt. And no one asked me before as a talent leader how I felt. So if you
Mhm.
all want to know how you actually feel about something, just sit in it. And I realized that it was necessary, but not sufficient. I realized I have been pursuing the sense of belonging and care, that I mattered, that I fit in, that my quirkiness, my joy, my uniqueness was wanted and needed in the world, that the
Mhm.
fact that I was different was my gift. And I'll be
Yes,
darned.
yes, 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 yes,
I'll
yes.
be darned if anyone dims my light. I got my own scorecard. Like, let's go. Let's create these belonging moments for everyone. And I got goose chills for myself because I'm in pursuit of that. And that's why I do this. And I don't call it work. It's my life's journey.
Yeah, right. And I think that that is the right. It's not a deficit.
It's a gift.
And teaching just that understanding, right? That the things that are this broad, beautiful spectrum that we all bring of everything, that our differences are superpowers. And the creating the space and the place, because I know philosophically, right, you were kind of one of the early leaders, Pat, in talking about inclusion and belonging, right? There were, right, we've talked about, right, if you look at the evolution of all of this, and I would just say more kind of philosophically how you approach this, because you're sitting in a CHRO role, right? A people role. You're not sitting in a chief diversity officer role.
No. So I was asked to speak about it, about D&I, TED-like talk. Mind you, I'm an introvert. So I'm like, I don't need to talk. Like, I'm on a panel. I'm cool. Leave me alone. And so
Can I hold up, right? Can I hold up just a card?
Yes, exactly. And so they asked the word, how you feel. And that's when I thought about my life and how I felt about it. And I've written affirmative action plans in my life. I've done the process. I've done the inclusion work. I've done the research, but I realized that I have not done enough. We have not done enough. And I realized when I had my joy is when I had the sense of belonging. When I was I played baseball in Little League in 1972. I'm dating myself, but that was before girls were legally allowed in the Little League, and it was in New York. And I was not wanted. I kind of faked them out when I tried out for the team. I had short hair, called myself Bob all day long to play with my brother and his best friend. And then the hoopla happened and they let me on the team and they stole my mitt, but I stayed on the team. And finally I was good enough that they wanted me on the team because I had skills, I had special powers that they wanted me. And they loved the fact that I was different and was a superpower for them. And then I started doing research, like, I can't be alone in this thinking mode. I can't. And so I went out in the virtual world and physical world and connected with people and learned that there's, in our genetic makeup, we want to navigate uncertainty.
Yep.
Right. Will I fit in? Will I survive and thrive? I mean, that is a whole being.
So, yeah, so let's stop just for a second there, because I think some of this, right, some of the neuroscience, y'all, around this is really important to understand. Our hardware has not changed since we were trying to survive, right? Like literally just trying to survive. And when you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right, and belonging really is about, if back in the day, if I did not belong, it actually could lead to me moving down on that pyramid to safety.
Yes.
And so we like to think that we're this, so we are hardwired for literally needing belonging.
Yes. To survive.
I wanted to just, right, I wanted to, because I think sometimes people don't realize that piece of it. And that is why when the same neural pathways are firing when excluded as those of pain, right? And this is all the neuroscience of, which is so key to understand, because this is not soft, warm, fluffy stuff.
No, this is critical stuff. And so I went on this journey and I started talking about, because belonging was not attached to D&I back then. In 2016, it was not a thing. And I'm like, it's a thing, people. Like, you can get my diversity in the room, But if I'm not feeling comfortable to speak out on my unique point of view, my unique powers, then you're not leveraging my magic.
Right,
And
right.
so that push, the other thing I learned also is the push to belong for safety and for success means I mask. I hide who I am if I'm in threat. And so there was a whole study that I learned about, and Kenji, who I followed on cloaking, it's even the white male will cloak and mask 25% of the time. They may not like football or sports and pretend they do. They may not like beer, but they'll drink it to fit in, right? You can think of all these things you do to fit in and belong. But if you're in fear for your life, you're 100% faking it. And the energy and the waste and the emotional anchor that creates is like horrible, just horrible.
Well, and right, especially for those, right? Let's just talk about your intersectionality, right? And when you're thinking about multiple identities that you may be switching, and there's a great, we'll find it and we will post it in the comments. It's this thing where a woman walks into work and you watch her code switch, depending on who she's talking to, and it's maybe a minute and a half, and it's
I want to see
brilliant. It's brilliant and hilarious, and like everyone that watches it is like, oh yeah, wow.
that.
And right, and the wasted brain power and energy and I mean, for me, joy, right, just sucks the joy out of the workplace experience.
So here's where I fell in love with belonging. So I was intellectually curious about it. I knew it mattered to me. I knew when I was accepted at work amongst a bunch of men in engineering, I had more joy and my career took off. Like each of those moments, I can see correlation, causation. But I ran into Professor Walton in Stanford, and he does the research on uncertainty. Y'all, you should look it up.
Mm.
And what he did in the university path is taking people of color into a majority white university, and they walk in with a lot of uncertainty. Will I survive the school and will I thrive in the school? And so he was looking at dropout rates, grades, et cetera, and attainment of their degree. What he learned is the power of the story of someone that has a similar path as I do tells me that not only can I do this, I can survive and thrive in this space. And here's how. My confidence goes up. So my uncertainty goes down, my confidence goes up. And then through the storytelling, connecting to others, I have a sense of care and support. I create more friends. So what he discerned was through this path of creating belonging moments in my language, right? That I higher GPAs, better graduation rates, better joy, and more friends. And I'm like, who doesn't want another friend? I do.
Right, right.
So I'm like, I'm down with belonging. And I remember driving into work at LinkedIn, and I'm like, I'm trying to figure out a way to frame this to my boss and my peers, because this is not a known thing yet. And I came up with DIBS, right? So diversity, inclusion, belonging. And I grew up East Coast. So I'm like, you call dibs for ice cream or the front seat. And so I'm like, let's call dibs on belonging and, make this main stage, make it understood, because I can give a belonging moment in milliseconds just by like pausing and saying, how are you?
Yeah. Right. I see you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that is just when people actually lean, you feel the difference if someone sees me and you really care about me. I love that.
So in the Everyday Inclusion app, we have inclusion interviews, and there's one with an introvert. And one of the questions that we ask is, we always ask about language and what they wish people would stop doing, and how can people be an ally? What do you wish people knew? To a person in those interviews, Pat, people say, see me, right? See me, right? For who I am, don't put a label on me, don't see me. And I think that is the heart of this work, right? When we're talking about belonging, it is seeing you for all of the facets of you.
I agree.
And I love the way that you talk about this in terms of belonging moments, because it is, right? And it's not one moment, it's moments, plural, right? That we're That
plural.
we're constantly creating, right? That we're constantly creating these moments for one another.
Mhm. Yeah, and they're easy to get. And what I found, and I just have my mom sitting on my shoulder, is that to give is to receive. So every time I got on my introverted self, not like walk through the hallway and say, good morning, kept walking. And I paused and I said, good morning, how are you? How was your weekend? And just kind of paused for a moment and just waited for the answer. You'd be surprised how many people don't expect you to wait for that answer. We've conditioned ourselves not to wait. And I'm like, I'm
Yes.
gonna wait and see what happens. The joy, smiles are contagious. I feel better. Like every belonging moment I've given, I've gotten tenfold back.
You know what's interesting, Pat, is I'm known for my kids used to cringe. And now I see they're young adults and I see them doing this. Wherever we are, I will ask, how's your day been? Right. It's not kind of right. And it's like the number of times somebody goes, well, it's been okay, or it's been this, or it's been, and they tell you these, like it's the checkout person at the grocery store. But they're like, wow, and the interactions that you have with the simple question of how's your day been? And listening, because sometimes the day has been really rotten, right?
You
And
gotta
I've
listen.
been the only person to have asked that person how their day has been.
Yeah, listening is the key, like being intentional with the query, with
Yeah,
care.
right. Right. Not flippant.
Mhm.
I liked how you said, and stopping and listening to the answer, right? When you were asking, how's your weekend been? You stop and listen to the answer because you
Mhm.
find out so much too.
What a gift. And then I know the whole human. I'd never, well, I won't say never, that's always a trouble. I strive to introduce people by who they are, not their title, not what they do, because what they do is a moment in time. It's not, doesn't make up who they are. And so knowing their passions and their hobbies and their family and their joys and why they have certain superpowers, like this is Karen, she's amazing. She's on the team. She's my best optimist. Like she will find a path forward and lifts me up. Like everyone needs an optimist. Like let's celebrate your uniqueness.
So I think we've talked about some of this, but I want to dig in more. Like, what have you seen really be successful for creating these cultures of inclusion and belonging?
The biggest, best tool I have found is storytelling.
Yeah.
It is by far, again, getting into the science of it. So everything's grounded in science if you want to spend the time. And I wrote a piece in HBR a while back on this, but if you tell, like Paul Knack is a social economist and he thinks about changing behaviors. And if you tell a story from beginning, middle, and end that you own, it's personal. It releases chemicals in our brains. I connect to you differently, forevermore changed, right? And so if you think about our species, right? The human condition is the verbal storytelling. It's the moral of the story. Don't go into the woods. Bad things happen over there. This is why you do good. Goldilocks and Three Bears, or, you name it. And so if you tell these stories about these belonging moments, so when I didn't feel like I belonged and when I do feel like I belong and why it mattered to me, we create connectors. Right? Think of them as neuron connectors of a human level. That creates the community, that creates the trust, that creates the joy. And you create these moments of epiphanies of learning. Like, I didn't know you felt that way, and I'm going to change how I show up in the next meeting. Or I didn't realize that would be a tip or a trick that I could use to make others feel more welcomed. Oh my goodness, I didn't know. Happens all the time through storytelling.
Right. Well, and as you again, back to the neuroscience of we've been doing this to connect forever. And I think that there is some other interesting, like when you talk about biting into a lime, right? Some of your mouth might have just watered, right? Because it's the same pieces
Yes.
as if you were biting into that lime. So as you're telling these stories, particularly as you're telling how it impacted you, right? Positively, negatively, all of those things, and I love what you were saying, right? In terms of forevermore, we are connected in a different way because we just had this experience together. I just felt what you were feeling.
Mm-hmm. It changes. It just changes. So tell your stories. I've seen it, like where you amplify from the company perspective, your employee stories. how do I create a belonging moment welcoming you to our team? Language matters, not my team, not their team, our team, right? And realizing that you're not just assimilating one employee to the team, you're creating a new team. So just back 10,000 feet, it's a new bloody team, folks. New dynamics, new skills, new magic. Let's pause and assimilate again. Let's tell our stories to each other, because it's not just them telling their story. It's all of us sharing our stories.
And I think that this is really important. One of the things is we get asked about companies' culture.
Mhm.
And we always point people back to the team cultures, right? An organization is made up of all of these team cultures that make up the overall culture, and how important it is to allow the time, the space, and for those frontline leaders to really understand they are determining this culture.
Mhm.
And teaching them the power of storytelling.
Yeah, I had a long held belief that this hypothesis was proven out recently, that managers have more impact on our mental health than our primary doctor, equal to your partner, right?
No surprise.
Right? Like
No
you kind of believe it, but to see the data, it's like, wow. And then I'm thinking, all right, I have had the privilege to lead a bunch of different folks in my career. And then all of a sudden I started seeing this pattern of what I would call bruised employees.
Oof.
It's from a prior experience, a prior leader, and I can tell by how they're querying on different things, pushing back, staying quiet, getting irritated faster than anyone else on a certain thing. Like, whoa, unpack that? What's up? Right? Let's rewire that experience for you and make you healthier, right? Like, what does a healthy team dynamic look like? And I don't believe that we should have part-time managers. Your job, first and foremost, the leg you lean on is manager, leader, not IC. Like if you think it's just a path up for career, it's not your path. It is care of that team. It's creating a vision, inspiring, but nurturing the best. I want my team to be net better off by having ever worked with Pat Waters. That's my goal.
Well, right, and I have often said, imagine you're somebody's great leader story.
Oh, that like that
10
too.
years, right?
Yeah.
10 years from now, they're telling a story. Somebody asks them who's the best leader you ever had, that it's your name.
Wow. Honor that would be. Yeah. I would agree.
That's weighty. And I think what I find interesting, Pat, is organizations who spend a lot of time with their executives, right? And training for the executives and these frontline leaders and managers who are newest in role and have the greatest impact. We should be pouring into them, giving them the resources and tools that they need.
Yeah, I think the pragmatic challenge is that you got to start the tone at the top, like whatever language, nomenclature, commitment you have, and then you got to do like a fast follow, make it open the aperture, make it available, and then model it. Because if I see this training and I look up my boss, he or she or them are doing this, and I'm not like doing the same thing, like where do I get reinforced? Right, that sense of belonging pull. Like if you're a brilliant jerk and that's what makes us successful, then I will. Is that how I should operate? No.
Well, and I think it's important too, right? Because then there's a lot of pressure on this. And I think that is where it is important to also have grace, right? In terms of, boy, all of us are going to screw up and right, we're going to have bad days or bad moments. What do we do after the bad day or the bad moment?
How you pick yourself up. That was one of my biggest, hardest lessons.
So what do you hope the future holds?
Grace, compassion, agility. Agility, I hear a lot about transformative leadership, right? Transformation and so on and so forth. But if you think about AI, machine learning, the change in the macroeconomic conditions, social, landscape, I think if we have embraced the soft skills, because they're much harder, right? The inquiry, the compassion, the growth mindset, the listening skills, what voices are missing at your table so you get wiser.
Yeah.
Right. And show appreciation. And then, gosh, we all have to make tough decisions, but then give the context and own the decision. And being perfectly imperfect, own the mistake. Like, I bumped in that plexiglass wall. Oh my gosh, bruised my nose. Like, I gotta fix this. Like, your feedback was really great. I can course correct, the mountain's right, I can change a path. And being humble with that. I think that's what the world needs. I really do. We do work, we're humans. We evolve because we're agile. Change shouldn't be scary. It should be human and compassionate. And I would love that. I want healthy companies. I want a healthy world. I want amazing leaders.
Yeah. I knew this was going to be such a fabulous conversation. I'm feeling all warm and fuzzy, like everything that we were talking about in terms of what's happening chemically in my brain. Would you please leave me with one last truth bomb about inclusion and belonging?
It takes courage. And it is easier path to advocate and be courageous for others than for oneself. And if you strive to do that, you will get the gift in return. People freeze when they have to worry and advocate for self. Give it in a moment, model it in a moment, in a staff meeting, say, excuse me, so-and-so, I want to hear what Mo has to say. I want her to finish her thought. And just doing it with grace will change the dynamic of that meeting forevermore. They will realize they spoke over someone. They will realize that was awkward. But it was easier for me to do that for you because I'm tired of being interrupted. Like, so, like, it's a gift that you give to others, but it will model it for yourself. And that was a truth bomb. I realized I didn't have to always fight for myself alone.
Pat, thank you for who you are in the world, for what you do, for what you brought. Y'all will get the link to Pat's HBR article and put it in the comments. I know that you mentioned a couple of the resources. I'm guessing that some folks on my team have been putting those in, and for modeling. I think that is just I've watched kind of where you've gone and what you've done and the legacy that you're leaving behind in such a positive way. And let's all aspire to that, right? Let's all aspire to be curious about this and how we can get better and how we can lean into this, because it's worth it.
It is worth it. I'm a happier person in the journey.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, y'all. We will see you next time on Everyday Inclusion and Belonging. Get out there and do the next right thing.